Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday. It's 4:30 p.m. Central Time. It's very, very late Swedish time, but it is time for office hours here on the ViaMonstra Academy. And with that being said, we do have a very special guest today who will introduce himself right after this message. Still so proud of that little trailer. Good evening, gentlemen. Good afternoon. How are you guys?
Doing well. How are you?
Hanging in there. It's been a long Wednesday. And even longer for Michael, who's joining us. It's close to midnight back home, isn't it?
Yes, it's about it's like 28 minutes before this day ends, and this is actually a lunch break for me.
A lunch break, he says.
It's a lunch
Okay.
break. Yes, well, it's an evening lunch break. As you know what I'm working in and on, and right now we are working on yet another incident that has been going on for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, and for the rest of the world, when Michael says incident, it means that an organization somewhere around this planet, primarily on this planet, has been attacked with ransomware. They have a bunch of machines encrypted, and Michael and his team usually have the opportunity of cleaning up the mess.
Yeah.
Figure out A, what happened, and two, rebuild it with put everything back in order again.
And that's the funny part, because I've been working with operating system deployment and client management and server management for years. I mean, you and I have been doing this so many times, and I never thought I ever would use these valuable knowledge things. You remember when we wrote the book about building an infrastructure using PowerShell? You remember that?
One
Yes.
vividly. Yes. Yeah.
And we both said that this is going to be the way people are building systems. And I remember you said nobody's ever going to use PowerShell to build a domain controller. It will never happen. And I said, yes, it will. And you said, no, it will never happen. And that's basically what we do, not every day, but at least 4 or 5 times a week. We rebuild everything using PowerShell. So
yeah, we started to do the same thing in the hydration kits for the same reasons. Yeah. But Michael,
yep. Sorry.
Who are you?
My name is Michael. I'm 10 years older than Johan, which means I know pretty much everything about 8-inch floppies. Johan knows about 5-inch, 5.25 floppies. Like Johan, I've been doing operating system deployment, client management, server management for a very long time. I can't even remember when I started. Traveling around, being a consultant, being a speaker. For some weird reasons, I wrote a couple of books together with Johan, which I still think is funny. And we are, of course, working on the next stupid project, which is apparently going to be a book, hopefully. That's who I am.
All right. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for spending out your late hours with us. And as usual in this show, we have a little section where we share updates and whatnot in our little industry, infrastructure and Intune and a ConfigMgr and all the other fun stuff that happens. And I know that you, Andrew, have seen a few things showing up since we spoke last time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll just add too that I know about 3.5-inch floppies. So I've got to throw that in there as well. We've got some good generations here on the on office hours this evening.
Almost 3 different decades of skill set combined.
I know. I feel like, I talk about this, Michael, I talked about this a little bit when you were on here before, but those books that you're talking about were such a great resource for me and others as we were, you guys had already spent a little bit of time in the industry when we were coming up. So those stupid projects are so far from it. They're fun. They're fun and great resources to those of us that barely knew 3.5-inch floppies.
Thank you, sir.
So, anyways, news.
Yes,
If you'd like to share my screen, I have a few
I
things
can
that I
do
came
that.
across.
That is within my powers.
All right, awesome. I knew that you had them. So first things first, as always, we got a monthly new Intune service release that just hit my tenant 2 minutes before we went live today. So a couple of things were late in the year. We're in December. Everybody's starting to wrap up, and I think that's probably the same for the Intune team. We had a couple of improvements as usual on the Mac OS and Android and iOS side of things. But since we primarily focus on the Windows side of things, I did notice that there was an updated security baseline for Edge. So Jorgen will be very happy to hear of this. Little bit of information, I know that much. There's a new visualization for the Defender for Endpoint connector on the reporting side of things. And then a couple of new settings for scheduling antivirus scans that are coming down as part of the AV policy in Intune. And these settings are basically around some of the randomization of the scan times on your clients. A couple other things in here as well, but those are sort of the highlights from my perspective.
I just checked my tenant as well, and it was also upgraded. I'm very, very pleased to see that.
Very, very nice. That's a real-time, quickest upgrade ever, right?
Those are fairly quick. Refresh the web page and you're done. All right.
I'll take that. Not too bad. Also on the Microsoft side of things, Windows Admin Center version 23.11 went GA as well. I noticed that. So the last couple of upgrades, I know they've made some improvements to onboarding Azure Arc or onboarding devices to Azure Arc, but a couple of things that I noticed specifically where they had updated to Angular 15 in this release, so it should be a little bit more performant, which is always a good thing. That Windows Admin Center's come a long way in the last few years in those improvements there. You can now import VMs into a Hyper-V box with Windows Admin Center. A couple of upgrades there as well. And this was a nice one. They're making improvements to, you can't really see it on the screen too well, but they are making improvements to, let's see if Zoom it helps a little bit. The error notifications. So you can see on the left here, there's one that is not too friendly to the eyes. It's just a big blob of text. And on the right side, you can see the new formatting for some of these errors, where you can see that we actually had a list in that big blob of text over on the left. So little quality of life improvements, I'll always take those.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Arc, because Michael apparently, was it Monday? Was it?
Yeah, it
Yes.
was Monday, and
Yeah.
it was at Nick, and it was at a webinar, and etc. etc. Yes, Azure Arc, which is, in my opinion, something you can describe as the closest thing you can come to Intune for servers.
Mm-hmm.
It is by far the first tool that Microsoft has ever released with focusing on managing servers at scale. Because none of the tools they had before has ever been that, right? I mean, PowerShell is great, but you can't interactively do anything with PowerShell unless you're extremely smart. So I agree. Azure Arc, together with Windows Admin Center, is the future of tools. And if you ask Microsoft, because I did not long ago, there's no one living at Microsoft, not one single live person at Microsoft that works on the MMC consoles anymore. The failover cluster manager team doesn't exist anymore, but the Windows admin team does exist. So I see on a daily basis people working with the old legacy tools, and they go like, "There's no new features in these tools." No, they are in Windows Admin Center. Move on.
I was able to locate that link. If I put that in the chat, Andrew, would you mind sharing it? Because you can still
Of
sign up
course.
for it. And according to the forum, it says that even though the event has occurred, obviously,
Yeah.
you get access to the recording. And that is
Yes,
shiny.
it is.
It's all right. All right, sidebar. As you were.
Very cool. No, a little bit of a sidebar as well on the Azure Arc side of things. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the environments that I've been in, they always have, primarily we all work with Microsoft and Windows, but you always have a few Linux servers in there as well. So if you want to manage or at least monitor some of the things on those Linux servers, I have been able to use Arc with some success as well, so that at least we've got all of the servers under one pane of glass,
Yeah.
which is pretty nice.
You want to hear something really funky and awesome?
Yes.
So let's assume that you have a very big organization and you are running Fortinet firewalls in 400 different locations. What would you say if I can say this? You can install the Azure Arc agent on all of them and centrally patch all your Fortinet firewalls. Completely unsupported. Works like a charm.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yes. we met the customer in Norway, and they use Azure Arc for managing everything Linux, including the firewall. And I was like, is that really supported? No, absolutely not. There's no way that will be supported. But comparing that to the native tools that Fortinet provides us, we'd rather use Azure Arc to patch the firewalls. I
Sure,
was
it's
like,
worth
okay.
it.
So yes, the patch management for Linux system means that a Windows admin actually can do patch management for Linux systems without knowing exactly how a Linux system works. It's really great, and they are adding more and more support for Linux systems as we speak. Because if you check the latest version of Azure Arc, it was released in December 2023, a few days ago, and the new version, of course, is supporting yet another version of Linux.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
It's especially great, like here in a lab, where I just don't have the time to go learn Ansible so that I can, automate all of my Linux servers, my 3 Linux servers that I have in my lab, throw them on Arc, and that's it.
Yep. I would say it's actually really good.
Yeah.
Windows Admin Center doesn't work on Linux machines, but there's another way. If you use Azure Arc, you can. I can show you that later. It's weird, but it's really awesome. You can do funky things with Linux machines.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So a couple more things here that I wanted to share. Oliver Kieselbach had released a new version of the SyncML Viewer, very popular tool, very widely used tool for Intune troubleshooting. And what he added here is, so there are some new protocols and primarily some new protocols and a new platform that are allowing us to manage our Windows clients. A lot of that is showing up under the hood. So here he references the MMPC, the Microsoft Managed Platform Cloud, which uses the declared configuration protocol, which is still using the underlying OMA-DM SyncML protocol. So there's a lot of protocols going on under the hood that allow us to configure our devices. I believe Rudy was also blogging about MMPC a little bit when that was first starting to show up. And so basically with these new things that are showing up, Oliver's tool got an update that gives us visibility into these new protocols. So you can see here he added a new button to trigger a device sync that will then show what's going on with MMPC. And then some additional reading enhancements as well. So let's see if there's anything else that I missed. Oh, yep. Base 64 decode action, which is very nice. If you have, like he it shows in the example here, there's some base64 encoded information in those messages. So you can decode that right within the tool. So some great stuff here. We talk about this tool quite a bit. Do you have something to add, Johan?
No, sir.
Okay, sounded like you might have. Sorry. And before I get one more thing, before I get to my last thing, I came across Matthias's blog post here on the 2Pint blog yesterday. Using Invoke-CimMethod with ConfigMgr WMI classes. So a lot of this is similar to if you have interacted with WMI and ConfigMgr over the years. Very similar, but the WMI PowerShell commandlets have largely been deprecated at this point for some time, I believe. They still work in a lot of cases, but they have been deprecated in favor of the sim functions. So get sim instance, for example. The benefit here to using sim, as Matthias points out here at the top, is that you can use these commandlets with PowerShell 7. So if you're doing cross-platform stuff, like we were just talking about Windows and Linux, or if you're just trying to get used to using the newer versions of PowerShell, these commandlets will work great for you. Also using WinRM for the remote operations rather than DCOM. So some security changes there as well. But great blog post here, a couple of examples of how you can use this to interact with ConfigMgr, perform a couple of actions like delete member from a collection, for example, add a member to a collection. So great stuff here from Matthias. And then last but not least, shameless plug. Of course, this is a total stealing with pride, Johan. Shameless plug. And I will say the price is right for this session. Tomorrow, I will be presenting with our friend Jorgen Nielsen on customizing Windows 11. I think we mentioned this probably last week, but we will be presenting this session at 9 a.m. tomorrow, Central Time. So hope to have you all join us. We'll be talking about some of the customizations you can make, not only to enhance the end user experience, but the security of the device as well. So would love to have any of you join us there. As I said before we hopped on the call, I'm very happy to be surrounded by some of the smartest Swedes that I've ever met before this week. My week is just full of Swedes. It's fantastic.
I'm sorry. It's interesting that you mentioned the fact that you can talk about securing endpoint devices. I can't really stress enough to have. It doesn't need to be crazy secure, but it needs to be fairly secure. At least all these simple things like using laps, for instance, using virtual-based security, using BitLocker. We see too many of these customers that are hit by ransomware that they use nothing. They think that name and password is good enough. It's not.
Well said.
So make them secure. I don't want to have them as my customers.
All right, I hear you. I've been working a little bit since last week on a PowerShell script that I wanted to share. So I'm often in scenarios where we have customers that are still using task sequences for their imaging, and before they image a location, they want to make sure that all the packages are available so that the image will go as quickly as possible, or the imaging will go as quickly as possible. And we have customers where basically an office is behind a satellite link or stuff like that, so they do not want to basically image over the WAN link, because in that environment that will take like days to do imaging that way. So they create pre-caching sequences that they use. And usually you take a sequence that you have down here. For example, I'm going to pick my XL1 sequence as a Windows 11 one with a bunch of packages. And those packages is the sequence is using them. And if I wanted to create a pre-caching sequence, I would have to go and add those packages into the sequence. And I got tired of doing that manually. So I wrote a PowerShell script that I have available here. But that script literally enumerates all the packages from the sequence you want to deploy and creates a new sequence with them, but for pre-caching. So that way you never risk to have any packages missing. But I do filter out packages that are smaller than 64 kilobyte because there is no point of pre-caching them because branch cache is not going to do anything with them anyway. It's faster to download them from the server. But everything above 64 kilobyte will even fit on one of your 8-inch floppies there, Mike, I think. Anyhow, that's what I was spending my weekend with. So that one is available if you want to play around with it. Simplify things a bit. Then we had a question coming in from, not so much question, but rather a comment. There was a discussion going on in our Twitter sphere, or X as it's called these days, around using dynamic groups and a specific variable called contains. Turned out to be a bit of a, I wouldn't say heated, but it was a discussion going on Twitter. And the change that Microsoft did, I'm going to show it to you. When you work with dynamic groups, I have a few dynamic groups here I'm using for Autopilot and some other stuff. But when you add dynamic membership rules and you add an expression and it shows an operator, they removed contains from this list. You can still use it, but you have to type it in here if you want to use it. And the argument was that, well, that has never really been supported. Plus, it's a quite expensive query, so we don't really recommend using it. And I get that part. That's fair game. It's better to use starts with and things like that because they're faster to query. However, as Michael Niehaus pointed out within 5 minutes after that thread started, it was yeah, but there are data in Intune that can only be queried by using contains. So okay. So avoid it if you can, but still use it if you absolutely must. So that's the summary of that one, that discussion. There was a question regarding the link for the ARC webinar posted anywhere. Yes, we had it up on the screen earlier. I can share it here again. Also on the TrueSec website. You go to platform, maybe? No, resources, and then events and webinars.
Yeah.
And that will be this event down here, modern management or modern server management with Azure ARC. And
Exactly.
as usual, we will share these links under the live video, depending on where you're watching it. But always up on YouTube, we also post these links up on the Academy under office hours as well. Should be around here somewhere.
And adding a note to that, I always write a blog post. I haven't done it yet, but I will write a blog post with all the show notes because I had a massive amount of Q&A and I'm still trying to answer all these questions and answers. That will be in the blog post, and the blog post will also point to that webinar. So hopefully that will be done on Monday because I'm going to work on the incident until Sunday, I'm pretty sure. But that's going to be a summary of the content, including all show notes and scripts and commands and etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, I see your blog post from the previous webinar also
Yes,
up on the blog there. So,
Yep.
So the blog is deploymentbunny.com, of course.
What else?
Where else? Yeah, indeed. Okay. Any other questions out there or comments?
Yes. So there is a question here from Richard over on LinkedIn. Within the last month, we are having issues distributing or updating packages to one of our DPs. Applications are not impacted. Any thoughts outside of security tools that we can check?
I mean, there are 2 log files involved with the distribution to a remote distribution point. It's the disk manager log file that you have in the installation folder on the site server. If I go to logs here, this one will be useful for troubleshooting, and then you have the package transfer log file as well. That one will show you the traffic going out from the site server to the remote distribution point. So probably start there. Other than that, if you have antivirus software, I actually talked to a customer Monday and Tuesday. They had not configured antivirus exclusions at all, but there is by Microsoft. Config manager docs antivirus exclusions here that they put together a fairly long list of things that you should exclude if you have not if you have like CrowdStrike, one of the more modern antivirus solution that doesn't really do file scanning, that they more look like patterns and processes and whatnot. But if you have like Defender or anything else that is actually scanning stuff, they have a long list of things that you should exclude. I usually make it simple for myself. I exclude the installation folder and exclude the content library because that's a great start. But if you really want to get nitty gritty into details, they have all the different folders that you need to exclude. And they would not document this unless there was a reason for it. So maybe that. But then, of course, there could be 45 other things. It could be routers causing problems or proxy servers, I was about to say, but all these different inspections solutions that are out there that can cause problems with distribution. It could be that you have broken packages. It could be that the content library is actually corrupt. I know Niall Brady, that we have mentioned many times here. He wrote a post about the content library cleanup tool. It's a command line tool that comes with ConfigMgr that can be used to clean up, broken or orphaned packages in ConfigMgr DP. So somewhere on that line, start, because you can run this tool in a what-if mode. You don't have to go ahead and delete the stuff. You can just ask, all right, how am I doing? The only recommendation, if you try to run this tool, put that distribution point in maintenance mode, because the tool will not work if there are clients actively accessing content on those distribution points. And I forgot which version, but it was a few years back when Microsoft added in the ability to just right-click a DP and enable maintenance mode. And then that DP will not be, Kylo here agrees, that distribution point will not be answered in the list of available sources for content. So that would be a good one. Anything you like to add, gentlemen?
No, I can tell you that having network issues when people are trying to use these what's called fantastic artificial intelligence firewalls, which doesn't protect from anything, but they do destroy network traffic from distribution points, is very common. I can tell you that. Our network engineers that we work with, they usually say, turn it off because it doesn't help. And it's unfortunately true. The hard thing is to convince the networking guy that they bought the really expensive equipment that doesn't help them. And the only thing that solves the problem is to turn it off and making it a simple firewall. But yes, it's a very common issue.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. I've got a question from EZ over on YouTube. Struggling with the latest version of OSD Cloud. I get an error that it's missing drivers for the hardware, including the Wi-Fi driver. The edit-OSD Cloud WinPE cloud driver doesn't work. I haven't had any experience with that portion of OSD Cloud. Have you, Johan?
It's been a long time since I tried out wireless deployments using that one, so I do not know.
Yeah.
I would recommend reach out to David Segura and see if he has any ideas. I know that as of late, Gary Block has been helping David with updating to support Windows 11 23 H2. So there have been done some changes recently. It might very well be something related to that, but reach out to either one of those, and they can probably help out with figuring out what's going on. Otherwise, you have to do the PowerShell troubleshooting on your own. But just a fair warning that that module is not tiny. It's a good few lines of PowerShell code that makes up that solution. It's a great solution, but there's a lot of PowerShell if you need to troubleshoot it.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a few lines of code.
The only one I know that is longer is Maurice's driver automation tool. That PowerShell script is 20,000 lines of code. It's like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, and you and I think that our start PS in the PSD toolkit, we think that's long. It's not even close.
No, ours is like 2,000 lines. We're like, oh, that's a long script, and then Maurice just wham.
I'll show you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So a comment here. Speaking of distribution, notice that distribution was failing to the CMG after the 2309 upgrade. Appeared that the CMG upgrade was failing. The logs were complaining of FIPS being enabled, disabled FIPS on the site server. CMG was good. Distribution was good.
All right. Thank you for that update. Useful information.
Absolutely. All right. I've got a question here from Marcelo over here on YouTube. I'm working for a university in the US. That group we have a group that wants to manage 500 Windows devices. The users are not in AD and Entra ID. What are my options for Intune? I know that that there's an Intune license for devices.
No.
I mean, there are. I mean, you can buy device licenses for Intune for shared devices and stuff, but usually you assign licenses to users in Intune.
The thing is that the Microsoft solutions for managing devices is meant for managing devices for users. The focus is always the user, it's never the device. They shifted that back in 2012 to user-centric, focus on the user. So none of the solutions for MDM today is for the device. You might pay the device license, but it's all about the end user experience and the end user. So all of the licenses and all of the methods is always focusing on the end user. Therefore, licenses are usually bought for users.
Yeah, I mean, I can bring up the license stock. I found it while you guys were talking, and I mean, it's fairly well explained on what scenarios a device only users can use, but the main topic here is like, okay, we offer this when devices aren't connected with specific users. So, I mean, we still treat devices as devices when we deploy certain things to them, but from a license point of view, it's usually on a per user point of view when using any type of cloud or Intune-based products.
Yeah, follow-up comment. I didn't think so. They always want to do the impossible. Yes,
Yeah, and it's also another truth. Even if you can, let's say that you really fight and you go like, yes, let's do device licenses. Um, having Intune to managing just devices aren't really easy. It's the pure device management scenario doesn't really exist. So it's even if you can pay for it, make it work, it's not going to be easy. I would choose another vendor in that case.
All right. Anything else out there? Any questions you guys might have? We do have a not only a security expert with us, but also data center everything. So if you have any questions related to that, by all means, stuff that me and Andrew probably wouldn't know the answer to, Michael usually does. So
I'm pretty
That's
sure
right.
you can answer those questions as well, but
it's not my forte.
ah,
Well, we
Could be
might be able
plenty.
to stumble upon an answer. It might not be the right one, but
answer.
yeah, exactly.
I can tell you something funny though. We talked about Azure Arc before. Did you know that you can manage Windows 10 and 11 devices using Azure Arc?
Had no idea.
Neither.
And that's kind of weird, right? Because isn't that making Azure Arc competing against Intune?
Well, Intune has a few more things,
Oh,
right?
yeah. But let's assume that the only thing you want to do is
Patch
run.
management.
You want to exactly. You want to do patch management, right? That's one scenario, right? And the patch management in Azure Arc beats patch management in Intune 100 times over.
So
So
what's the
what?
license looks like for managing
So
a device?
here's my good question. Why do you think they have support for Windows 10 and 11 in Azure Arc, but they do not have support for Windows Server in Intune? Why do you think that's the way? They are not competing. Because customers are using Windows 10 and 11 devices as specialized servers. Things that are IoT devices run Windows 10 operating system, Windows 11. They measure something, they pick up some kind of data, they send some kind of data. It's an endpoint device. It's just not a server because it's not a server operating system because that's too expensive. So they buy Windows 10 and Windows 11. It's like point of sales devices, but for the industry, which is defined as OT devices, operation technology. So that's why you can do Windows 10 and 11. You can't do application deployment, but you can manage the device, you can patch it, you can maintain it, you can restart it, you can run commands on it, and you can make sure it's healthy. You can also deploy Defender to it and monitor it in the cloud portal. So that's why you can manage Windows 10 devices. Maybe Johan is running a Windows 10 as a firewall. You can run that as a, maybe you can, maybe, yes. Or
Yeah,
Windows
I
11 as well.
found the here. This is what Michael was mentioning here.
Uh-huh.
So we do have customers that says, well, that means I can manage my Windows client devices using Azure Arc. And then it's always a discussion. When you define management, what do you want to do? Well, we want to patch them. We want to make sure that we can control them. We want to see them. We want to apply a policy to them. We want to make sure they are healthy and secure. Okay. Are there any users logged on to these devices? No, they are kiosk devices, or they are measuring devices, or it's acting as a server. So in the industry, that's very common that you use Windows 10 and 11 as not endpoint devices for end users, but endpoint devices for technology.
Oh, all right, cool. I
Very
learned
cool.
something new.
Digital signage right there is another example. That one speaks to me. I hadn't considered that. That is cool.
Yep. Which means that Azure Arc it's moving. It's slow, but it's moving towards to be the umbrella tool for managing on-prem servers, in-cloud servers, Windows, Linux, and Windows 10 and 11 devices that are treated as servers, even if they're not running an operating system, that is. Which means that Intune is focusing on more and more of, let's take care of the end user experience, the end user application, the end user security, things like that.
All right, thank you. We have another question coming in on YouTube here that is pretty much right up your alley. How, is that the word in English? Is that how you
Yep.
say it? Skill set?
Yes, sir.
Top 3 or top 5 admin center features, in your opinion, Michael? You can only pick 5, otherwise we'll be here for a long day.
I will not pick 5, but we can start. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, there is a button for it somewhere.
Okay. So, because there's
Just
one.
remember that we are live.
Yeah, sure. I just need to figure that this share my screen. Can I share a window? I can share a window as well, right?
Yes, sir.
I can share a window. That's my window. Can you see my window?
Yes, I'm going to put it on the screen right now.
Okay. So one of the really cool thing with Windows Admin Center is not really Windows Admin Center. It's the way to access Windows Admin Center. So right now I'm in the Azure Arc portal, and I can go to my machines here. And here's all my machines, which is located somewhere else. And I can click on that server. And here I can do everything in Azure Arc with that server. And I just want to highlight one really cool that has nothing to do with Windows Admin Center, but they added the feature a day ago. This is brand new. It's not even 24 hours old. They added run command. You can directly from a command prompt, PowerShell or Azure CLI prompt, run any command on any Azure Arc agent-based machines, which is both Windows and Linux machines. You do that by using an invoke web request together with a form file. But the cool thing with Windows Admin Center is this. I can connect to Windows Admin Center, which is now a local installation instance on this machine, which means that I can connect back to my servers from wherever I am using a secure reversed SSH tunnel. This means that this machine on the other end doesn't need to have any inbound connections at all. There's no inbound connections to this server. It can really be behind a firewall, and you can turn off any incoming ports. It needs one outgoing port, and that's 443 to Azure. And I can still connect using remote desktop. And then somebody says, well, now I need to have, you need to have remote desktop enabled. No, I do not. I need to have remote desktop enabled, but I do not need to have port 3389 open, because the connection is from localhost, because I'm connecting through the tunnel. This is like, I hate to say this, this is the way that the threat actors do. They create an SSH tunnel, and then they run anything in that tunnel. This is exactly what Microsoft is doing. It's more or less an SSH tunnel that is connecting from your machine to the Azure cloud infrastructure. Then from your cloud infrastructure, you can now do a reversed connection back on port 6915 in that tunnel. So any connection I do is from localhost. would you like to be able to connect to your data center without using a VPN and having the entire feature set of Windows Admin Center, including remote PowerShell and remote desktop?
When you say it like that, it does sound like a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
It does. Besides this, of course, I can do things like I mean, let's say that you're do you remember when we were in Portugal, Johan, and we were working in Portugal? If somebody would say to me, can you change the network driver on a server that is running a core server in Stockholm if you're in Portugal? My immediate response would be, no, I cannot. Using Windows Admin Center, you can. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, that we really need to change the network driver. So let's go here and go to my temp folder. And here I can actually upload a file here. If I want to upload a file here, I can create a new file, of course, but I can also drag and drop a file and put it here. Once I have the file here, which is super easy, I can now go to the devices here, and I can find the whatever driver I want to change. Let's say I want to change the display driver, and I can go here and I can go driver, and I can see update driver here, and then I can specify the folder I want to drive. I want to change the driver from that location. I don't need to be in a UI. I'm doing this outside of the operating system, and then just change the driver. Doing that on a core server in a remote desktop when you're in Portugal and writing a book on the beach 10 years ago, that would be defined as, are you stupid? What happens if I do something wrong? But doing it through these tools is suddenly kind of possible. And the same goes for, I can run PowerShell here, which is also interesting because it's really a PowerShell prompt. Let's do get WMI object, get WMI. I hate slow computers. Go. Win32 computer system. And the only connection I have is still an outbound connection 443, and I'm connecting through Azure, authenticated, multi-factor authenticated, etc., 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 etc. I can even be locked down to a privileged access workstation, all the bells and whistles from security. I can only be on that machine, connect to that machine, and do whatever I like. This is actually a bit more secure than being in the data center, because you can't have multi-factor authentication on desktop. So I think that what Microsoft has done is that they have combined Azure Arc with Windows Admin Center. And that is one of the coolest features you have. I can access everything in my data center wherever I am in a secure way. And I don't need to have any inbound connections.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
What else has been coming in, Andrew?
So any thoughts on security regarding managing the Intune or Entra portal with MFA from internet exposed endpoints where IT staff are local admin?
Like basically having a jump station, like an admin workstation, I'm assuming. I don't see the need for them to be local admin on that one to run the admin tools. But if they are, yeah, that's always a challenge. Internet exposed endpoints where the users are local admins.
Yeah. So the challenge is that it doesn't really matter if they are local admins, as long as the account they're using cannot be reused somewhere else. So let's say that you're a local admin on a machine, and your account is only a local admin on that machine, and you can't use your account anywhere else. Well, then it doesn't matter because you can't reuse it. The problem is that you often log on with an account that is local admin on every device and it's domain joined. Then you have an exposure. That's dangerous. Then it's better to use laps. So you're just a regular user, and then you can elevate you as you're needed. Because if somebody is on your machine, the only thing you're going to give him is something that the threat actor already has. There's no way to traverse it. So it's not local admin itself that is a problem. It's that somebody else is a local admin and can steal your password or your hash or your session or your key or whatever they want to steal. That's the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that comes to mind that has been released quite recently is the endpoint privilege management feature that is part of the Intune suite, where you as an organization have the ability of allow certain processes, applications to be elevated, but nothing else, giving you a little more of a granular control of what's being allowed on the device or not. So maybe something like that.
But the challenge is always this: if you can physically be on a machine, then there is no protection. I mean, if you can touch the device, well, then you can touch the device. You can do whatever you like with it. So the only thing you do when you say, well, you can't be a local admin, is that you're preventing people from easily become a local admin. You don't prevent them to be a local admin. If you Google for things like how to bypass UAC, you can find at least 500 PowerShell scripts that just bypasses UAC.
Yeah.
Because you're on the machine, right? And you can do whatever you like. So it's never a super protection. The thing is that as long as you can protect the password from being reused somewhere else, and the account doesn't have permission somewhere else, then it doesn't matter.
All right. Thank you, sir. There was a question on YouTube from ET Monet. What are the pros and cons of using, so this is Intune, security baselines versus using configuration profiles and say the settings catalog for the same type of settings? And the end result on the client is not going to be different because you are setting the same settings. What we have seen recently is organizations are favoring the settings catalog because it becomes a more common way to do all settings. So they have the same way of configuring everything. And that's also where Microsoft is doing a lot of the investments because it's easier to use predefined values than trying to type in like, obscure XML string somewhere for a custom CSP. But the benefit of the baselines is obviously they are there by default. They have gone through a bunch of testing to make sure they are at least a somewhat functional device after you have applied such baseline. Even though they are not matching like CIS benchmark and other baselines, there are a lot of similarities in between them. So for me, it's more like, okay, I need a starting ground. Well, a baseline can be that starting ground, but we are definitely seeing organizations favoring the settings catalog and configuration profiles to have a common way to apply most settings. That's my take on it.
I agree. I mean, if you have nothing today, you do need to get a security baseline out there. That is far and away the easiest way to do it. Start testing. One of the drawbacks could be that, we mentioned with 23.12, the Edge baseline was updated to version 117. So those baselines can be a little bit delayed in their updates. And you do have some inconsistencies in descriptions and settings and stuff like that between configuration profiles and the baselines, but a lot of that is being resolved through the settings catalog that Johan mentioned. I like the baselines. They're a nice way to get started and get that foundation on your device, as you said, Johan.
All right.
Very good.
If I ask very politely, is there a way I can show just one other awesome, cool thing?
That should be allowed, I think.
Because I told you, Andrew, that I can show you a really cool way to connect, right?
Yes.
So we are back on my screen. Okay. And this is another server. And that's the Windows Admin Center. We're not going to use Windows Admin Center right now. We're going to use that one. So it's connect. And I'm going to use connect using SSH in a reversed SSH tunnel. Now, if you haven't seen this, it's a kind of weird thing, but that's my name. I'm going to connect in the browser. I can open a prompt to run this, but I'm going to connect in the browser. When I connect in the browser, it fires up a Cloud shell, which runs bash. So I'm running a Cloud shell that runs bash that connects back to a command prompt where I can type PowerShell. And now I can run PowerShell. And now I'm on that machine using a PowerShell command prompt that runs on a command prompt that is in a bash Cloud shell, which I connected through SSH.
Okay, that is pretty cool.
It is pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I was trying to avoid new things to play with this week, but I think you've given me big time, huge failure. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so what you have is that you basically have a connection. And since SSH it's by default in Windows, you just need to add it and configure it for port 22. And once you do that, you use the Azure Management Command tool, and you run what's called an ACC management, and then you define that I want to have an incoming port, and you define port 22. If you want to do Windows Admin Center, then you add port 6516. So even if you so your reversed SSH tunnel, it actually have a firewall in itself. So you can define exactly what ports that are allowed from Azure.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We had one question coming in from Alexis, and that was regarding PSD, or the PowerShell deployment extension that we have for MDT. And the question was, is it still being developed? Absolutely, yes. We pushed an update just about a month ago for it, and it does work with Windows 11 23H2. Not because we explicitly tested it during development for it, it just happened to work with it. And it also works with the latest ADK, the September 23 25398 build of the ADK. I have seen or received a lot of questions lately, okay, but it breaks MDT. Yeah, that because they removed or by accident messed up the VB script support for it. And the workaround was, of course, to download the components and just inject them. But now there is an official fix available. So I just wanted to share that with you guys before we call it a day here. But long story short, the update from both October and November here, but I'm using the November update for Windows Server 23H2. So a later one than Windows Server 22, that particular update, if you apply that to your boot image, it puts VBScript back if you have that component enabled. So I put together the script that I published up on the website. You simply define where your boot image is. You run the script and it patches that boot image and it enables VBScript back, which is required for MDT to function. So that's more elegant, and it's a supported solution, of course, for Microsoft to do this. Now, MDT itself does not support Windows 11, nor ADK, any version older than like 2004, or if it was even older than that. Yeah. But it works. But to answer the core question, PSD is still being developed. And as far as we know, it does work with the latest versions of both ADK as well as Windows 11 without having to do anything like this.
Yeah, I can vouch for that because we have in in the last 3 days, we have so far installed 3,000 computers over the internet. And before Friday, we will have installed 4,500 computers from one single machine, which is running our PSD solution
In Azure, I believe.
in Azure.
Yeah. All right. We are up on time.
Sorry.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Andrew, for joining. And thank you, everyone out there who's been asking questions and entertaining us with good comments and thoughts throughout this hour. As usual, we hope to see you next week. And other than that, have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Bye-bye.